once the top has gone on. That is by far one of my top favorite parts. It's just you and a shaping stand, a board, and a hand plane. Everything else is out of your view. It's simple, it's pleasurable, it's quiet. You can be with your thoughts and you can just kind of be present. There's something about taking a nice sharp edge tool to a beautiful piece of wood and feeling the curls coming off and knowing that every pass that you're making, you're kind of getting it closer and closer to what you have in mind. Once we've shaped it down and the board's looking like it's supposed to look like, time for it to go into the glassing room. 4-ounce fiberglass, laying it over the board, draping it over the edges, cutting it, applying epoxy, and on the board. Once both sides are lamb coated, it's time to put in the hardware. Drill and router and install the fin box. And on the other side, we drill and put in the leash plug and a vent. There's a lot of air just naturally inside the board, and that air wants to expand and contract with temperature changes. And that vent has a little piece of Gore-Tex fabric in it, and it allows air to kind of breathe both ways, but it doesn't allow water to get in. Once all that hardware is put in, it goes back into the glassing room. We brush a nice, beautiful, thick coat of epoxy over the whole surface, and that we call a gloss coat. That's supposed to look beautiful and glossy and shiny and flawless. You get to see that board come to life. Whatever the colors in the wood, they really come out. It just makes it look like candy. You just want to touch it and run your hands down it, and it's just kind of the icing on the cake. Once everything is hard, we put it into what we call the oven, get that epoxy to cure, really kind of bake it, and just get it to harden. Put in the fin, screw in the vent, and ship it out. We just love the idea of building something that's sustainable and long-lasting and made by hand. Kind of gives you a deeper connection to the product over something you might buy on a shelf. When a customer gets the board, they feel it. They 100% feel the amount of work and the amount of passion that went into the board. So I'm not really looking at hours and efficiency. We're looking at like doing it right and enjoying it as we go.
Ma Baoli, better known as Gang La, is one of the 4 Grand Marshals leading New York's Pride Parade this year. But in the country he comes from, being gay is still a social taboo. The CEO of a Beijing-based internet company is on a mission to improve the lives of millions of gay men in China.
对于每一个 LGBT 人群来说，即使这个国家不允许你跟同性爱人结婚，但是你仍然要勇敢地去选择你自己的生活，你仍然应该拥有幸福生活的权利。
Ma's company Blue City runs an app and a website specifically for gay men. Blued is one of the biggest gay social networking apps in the world, with an estimated 30 million registered users. Unlike most other apps, Blued is more than just dating or hookups.
大家可以在我们这个软件里面找他自己的情感，然后可以阅读相关的内容，然后可以进行一些娱乐，比如玩游戏啊，比如看直播啊等等。
Back in 2000, when Ma studied at a police school in northern China, he realized he didn't feel like everyone else.
因为他们都找女朋友，然后谈恋爱，但是我对长得好看的同性的男生，我反而觉得对我更有吸引力。所以那个时候我就到互联网上去找这样的一些资料，然后希望能够告诉我自己我到底是谁。互联网上所有的信息都是负面的，都是错的，就是说同性恋要电击疗法，要被治疗，然后要吃药等等。
After visiting some foreign websites with different attitudes to homosexuality, Ma created his own site for a Chinese audience, encouraging people that
他们也是正常的，他们不用自卑，然后也不用自杀。
even though attitudes towards homosexuals are slowly changing in China, it's still a social stigma. The virtual world of Blued, where members can be open about their sexuality, is for most a striking contrast to their real lives. This is live streaming, a function added to Blued in late 2015, right as the internet craze was starting to take off in China. Many self-made stars like Jin make decent amounts of money by receiving audiences virtual currencies and gifts.
我们不是彼此的初恋，初恋这种事儿多不靠谱啊。
For Kyle and Klaus, a couple who have come out, live streaming on Blued means something different.
其实我经常会收到很多粉丝的一些互动的留言，就是类似就是说你们让我们看到了同志情侣之间的一些希望啊，我看到这样的留言我是很欣慰。
The government's rules for acceptable content online may shift quickly in China, with LGBT material in a grey area. Many companies feel the chill of the recent internet crackdown, but Blue City still runs as usual. Ma has won the Chinese government's trust by helping with HIV prevention among gay men. A third of the company's staff are dedicated to screening pornographic and politically sensitive content.
我不太多的愿意去对抗，我更多的愿意去对话，去改变他们的想法。我觉得这个可能在中国来说是更有效的。
In the past 5 years, Blue City has grown from a team of 7 people to a promising business with about 250 staff. Ma said the company earned over $15 million last year, mainly through advertising and selling virtual currencies to live streaming audiences. Now the company is expanding overseas.
我希望吧，通过我们的努力，Blue能够成为全球第一家在美国纳斯达克或者是纽交所上市的这样的同志互联网公司。
This is Rich Chiga. He's a Chinese rapper by way of Indonesia, and he's very popular on the internet. This is Joji. He's a Japanese-Australian singer, and he's also very popular on the internet. Plus, Joji invented the Harlem Shake meme. Let me say that again. This guy, Joji, in the blood bathtub, invented the Harlem Shake meme. But we'll come back to that. So Rich and Joji are both signed to 88 Rising, an entertainment company hoping to build a lasting global brand that will outlive singular moments of virality. They primarily create content combining Asian culture and hip-hop, a formula that apparently pleases the internet gods greatly. They've only been around for 18 months, but they're already putting up major label numbers.
I think that we have an unprecedented collective of talent, a group of like predominantly Asian artists, you know, really like making waves globally, which from an independent point of view as well.
88's founder, Sean Miyashiro, cut his teeth launching Vice's electronic music channel, Thump. But quickly, Sean became interested in life beyond dance music.
I knew that after launching a whole content platform that I have kind of the ability and the know-how to do it again, but like for what was the question.
So Sean moved to the Bronx to start over and figure it out. He couldn't afford an office space, so he worked out of his car at the top of a grimy parking garage.
Everything kind of started here. If you look around, this is my environment. This is my serenity, really. 88 Rising was built here. Built on the grounds of LA Fitness, residence in a parking garage. I was living in the Bronx. I'm just like, damn, where the hell do I go? So I just come up here and I I just kind of figure things out every single day. Being like, okay, what the hell is this thing? Coming here was kind of like my own kind of private office, basically. Like, to be honest, I would even go to the bathroom here. I would like take pisses here, you know what I mean? Like, it was, it's just too far to go back down there. When I need Wi-Fi, I'd spend a good part of the day at Dunkin' Donuts. Hi, how are you? Can I get a chicken snack wrap?
Before 88 Rising officially launched, Sean caught a surprise break in the form of a Twitter friendship with a funny 16-year-old kid from Indonesia named Brian, who taught himself English by watching Rubik's Cube tutorial videos on YouTube. Seriously, that's true.
I thought his Twitter was genius, from the future, just crazy, and like just the shit that he was saying, like the memes he was making. But I didn't know that he rapped or anything like that. I really didn't, and he came up with that stick like 2 weeks later.
12 in the morning, pop shells for a living and baby gon' smell blood trail every minute, bro.
Dat Stick was Brian's first ever attempt at making a rap song, and it immediately went viral.
Everything was great about it, but the one thing that I noticed is the song was hard as hell. Just like everything about it, man. Just like, it was menacing, bro.
Soon after the video dropped, Brian signed with 88 Rising.
I'll FaceTime with Rich. Sorry for calling you Rich Chiga on my phone, Rich. Brian, he gets like super pissed off that he's saved in my phone as Rich Chiga. He's like, dude, am I not a human to you? What's good, bro?
What's good, brother?
How you doing?
Doing great. I just did sound check.
How was it?
It was tight.
So, Brian could definitely rap, but some viewers understandably took offense at a Chinese kid satirizing rap cliches and calling himself Rich Chiga. But if a group of well-known rappers saw the video and genuinely liked it, that could at least help validate Brian as a legit hip-hop artist. Plus, it could be really funny.
It was just kind of an idea that I just had on the spot. Everything that rappers say is better and funnier and smarter and wittier. You know, it's just more entertaining. We just edit it as tight as possible, put it up, and
it really worked.
12 in the morning, pop shells, living in.
Yo, this nigga got a pouch on, a Reebok pouch.
This is the hardest nigga of all time.
You said when you come for a trigger like me, that was dope.
Like, it's just lit, and I think people will take it as a joke at first, but it's like if he ran with that and kept doing more videos like that, it's just lit.
You know, I'd never been to America before, and like all of a sudden, just like I see like all the rappers that I listen to just like reacting to my stuff, and I was like, what? How did this happen?
The reaction video also went viral, and even led to a remix of Dat Stick featuring Wu-Tang's Ghostface.
I'll get on that track. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Really, on the remix?
Yeah. Oh, you know him?
And yeah, the remix went viral too. Brian has since acknowledged the misstep in his name and claims he may change it. But for the time being, he's still Rich Chigga to his fans. An ever-growing global audience, hungry for more releases from emerging talent around the world.
I didn't know that it was gonna be this impactful and this important to people, and I'm very thankful and blessed that it has. And every day now that I wake up, it's like it's just like a new mission every day.
A major part of that mission involves Joji. Remember the bloody bath guy? He's a former YouTube personality in the middle of a career transition.
The sound of this song, Will He, it's like a trap song that you can like slow dance to. Awkward prom shit, you know what I mean? I used to do crazy episodic internet videos. It was going well, and one day it was me and a few friends just in a room. We were casually chilling, and then someone plays the song, and it's brand new at the time. I happened to have a lot of costumes laying around, so I told the other guys, I was like, get in these costumes and let's just dance to it. Like, who cares? We were like, okay, let's just go crazy at the drop. So that video goes up. I go to sleep, and the next morning, everyone's doing it. Like, next morning. That taught me a lot about the internet, how people want to just be a part of something. And from that point on, something changed, and I was a little better at understanding demographics and people and, what they want to see and what they want to hear. I was friends with a couple other artists who were affiliated with 88, and then I also started to realize that 88 is the bridge between Western and Asian entertainment, and I really wanted to be a part of that.
Joji just released the In Tongues EP, his first project as a serious artist.
Joji's In Tongues record came out a couple weeks ago. It's #2 on Billboard on the R&B charts, which is crazy for, independent release, and he's like a brand new artist.
And the success is even more impressive, knowing he went from creating something like this,
it's just Taco Bell, what could possibly go wrong?
to creating something Tonight, Rich Chigga has a show in New York City. Tickets sold out in an hour.
I came here, I'm first online. I was here at 1.
Yeah,
I was the third person online.
So why'd you get here so early?
Because I want to see Rich Chigga. I want to touch him.
What do you guys think of Joji?
He's
That's my dad, son.
You guys cop the new EP or like?
Yeah. I woke up at 6 in the morning just to cop that shit. And then I listened to it, and that shit started making me cry.
This is actually kind of exciting. Every time, this never gets old. Like, you live online and social media, but like, there's nothing like just being with the people.
More often than not, viral success happens by accident. And then after an appearance on Ellen or Jimmy Kimmel, the creator's star power fizzles out. But Idiot Rising has figured out how to turn potential gimmicks into brands with an actual following that keeps coming back for the next thing.
Oh, shit!
So keep an eye out for Idiot's next move. But more than likely, it won't be covered on network television or terrestrial radio. Although, as they've already proven, nowadays that really doesn't matter.
Online retailer Farfetch is betting it can shape the future. This is its concept store, showcasing the latest in retail tech.
How do you capture all of that fantastic information that you gather in store with customers, touch and feel products? And we created a concept called the connected rail. And this is using a combination of RFID and ultrasound. The RFID signal recognizes the product, and the ultrasound recognizes the movement. Take the product off, and then you'll start to see your products appear. And essentially, it's like online browsing behavior. Whichever products you touch and pick up in the store are automatically sent to your app. This is effectively what you've created is your in-store wish list. In the middle, you'll see essentially a hologram of the product. What the customer sees, they control the experience on a touch device. What this allows the customer to do is take elements of products and then add their own style to it. Right, so this is the connected mirror. So in this example, I see my products. I select a coat, and that's tried it, and it's slightly too big for me. So what I can do is choose an alternative size and send a request to the sales associate, and they'll bring that size to me in the fitting room mirror. You'll also see that we've got some product recommendations here. Crucially, the sales associate's able to push items into the mirror from their device. If you wanted to, you could simply use the mirror and pay and go. Your items would then be packed and dispatched to you afterwards.
Do you want me to turn you so you're looking outwards? Yes, please. How about there? First time we came out with B, Jade said, "It feels like I've been released from prison." Do you want these, Mrs.?
Definitely.
Definitely. Right. Yeah. And she could say hello to everybody, people she hadn't seen for months.
It's
Hi, it's Jade.
Oh. So you can talk to Jade through this?
Hi, Katie. She's there.
Hi.
Every time anyone's seen her, they want to know why she's there. And it's kind of the opposite of when you're in a wheelchair and people see you and they kind of go, oh, should I look? I don't know what the right protocol is. When there's a tiny robot with its bright little eyes going around just looking happy everywhere, it really opens you up for conversation.
You've got some friends here, look.
Hiya. When I saw her for the first time, I remember thinking, this is going to change things. This is one of those points where if this was a book, this would be the cliffhanger. condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which means that I have a lot of dislocations, there's a lot of pain, and a lot of seizures and whatnot. So I can end up on my own in my room for long periods of time. A lot of the time, with a condition like my own, of course there's the pain, and the pain is bad, and the dislocations are bad, and the seizures and being in paralysis and never knowing whether you're going to be able to wake up properly tomorrow, that's bad. But what's worse still is being able to count the number of people you see a day on one hand.
Are you ready?
Sure am, I'm just hoping the connection's going to stay.
Yeah, me too. Alright, here we go.
When you're used to just the same little metre by metre and a half window every day, and you've been there for months, being able to just see the sky from somewhere else, or the tops of trees, or a sign, is incredible. Or being able to have that kind of chat in the car that most people would probably take for granted.
I'm going to go past Grandma and Grandad so you can give them a wave. Now, if Jade is particularly seizure-y, she can still take part. And that's brilliant, really, because before she would just be left in a bed or in a house with just her carers. It's quite a small world, that.
Right, so there's one of her. Here, this costume I'm busy making at the moment. When I'm not on bed rest and I'm not just wearing pyjamas all the time, I enjoy being able to dress as different characters and go to Comic Cons and that kind of thing, because it just lets me show a different side of myself, and it's a bit of fun. If you can't go out that often, you've got to enjoy it when you do. Was that? Good. It's one of those weird things where I want to not have to use B because I want to be well enough to be able to go those places myself. Like, it really makes a big difference to me to be able to go into school. But the thing is, with my condition fluctuating all of the time, I can't go into school reliably. I've been in school via B, and so far it's interesting. Still a few little things that we need to work out, but for the most part I think it's going fairly well, and it's brilliant because I can really tell the difference between today and yesterday. How yesterday I forced myself to go into school when I wasn't very well, and I was really tired afterwards and ended up having loads of seizures, whereas today I've been able to do all of the work. I've been able to keep a clear head and not be ill, which means I'm able to be more focused on my schoolwork.
So there is my first step of working, is to simplify root 8. The algebra test is next week.
Now I'm trying to make friendships which I'll be able to maintain with B. Before that, I end up letting people down quite often. B gives me hope, yeah. She's just always there, and if I can't do something, she can, and if I need sort of assistance to be able to make commitments, then she's there, and she means that I feel like a more valuable person because I'm more reliable.
When it debuted, the 4G wireless we have today allowed people for the first time to hit the road and explore unknown places with only a smartphone for directions. When 5G arrives, it could enable driverless cars to take us there as well. 5G stands for fifth generation mobile networks or wireless systems. It's insanely fast and can accommodate a lot more connected devices. But the reason it's being called revolutionary is because 5G will allow connected devices to speak to each other as well as people.
Right now we're living in a world where really it's a one-way experience.
That's Bloomberg tech reporter Ian King.
The network talks to your phone, you look at your phone and access data, then you send something back to the network. What we're being told about 5G is that really for the first time we're going to see machines communicating with each other over mobile networks in a meaningful way.
5G could end up being 100 times faster than what we have now, with speeds that could reach 20 gigabits per second. In plain English, that means downloading a full-length HD movie in seconds. 5G will also increase total bandwidth, which we will need in order to accommodate the growing Internet of Things. We're talking about the class of devices like internet-connected refrigerators, thermostats, dog collars, but 5G will enable many, many more.
Things like your utility network, factories, where machines are just sat there not connected at all. Suddenly they're all going to be connected. Suddenly we're going to be able to have real-time monitoring. Other things like cars, like utility poles, like your light, the light poles.
But perhaps the biggest advance will be a huge reduction in communication lag time, known as latency. A network of driverless cars will need the speed of 5G to ping each other multiple times per second to avoid collisions. Near instantaneous data transfers could allow doctors to perform surgery remotely with a robotic scalpel. So how will all this work? First, you need to improve network density.
And that's just a fancy word for saying you put more towers out there. What we're being told is that's not actually the case with 5G.
The idea is 5G will not only use the existing mobile spectrum, but also tap into higher frequencies called millimeter waves. Millimeter waves can carry more data, but only travel short distances. This may mean you'll see a lot more of these base stations around town. And the new towers may have as many as 100 antenna ports, compared to about a dozen on 4G cell towers. So when will we get 5G? Getting 5G ready is expected to cost providers $275 billion over 7 years in the US alone. Look for the first 5G service to pop up in big cities sometime in 2019.
The cubicle represents a tyranny that it confines your imagination, your thoughts into a small physical area. Imagine pretty much every software engineer or finance person being able to, disconnect from their desk and look at holographic monitors on a beach and doing their work from there. That's not going to be science fiction. It's the modern office place.
Silicon Valley is all about building the future. A startup called Meta thinks it's getting there first, thanks to a big bet that it's made on augmented reality.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Welcome to Meta.
Thank you.
Call it a 360-degree office where you can spatialize your thoughts as part of your workflow for education, architecture, design, engineering, etc.
People often mix up augmented reality with virtual reality. VR totally blocks your ability to see or hear the real world. AR overlays holograms onto what you already see. Meta has tried to make its version of the workspace feel familiar.
You grab the hologram instead of using a controller or a mouse, and your brain already knows how to do it. In other words, we've designed an operating system that humanity has always known how to use. So you can see this eyeball, which is, by the way, photorealistic. You can see my hand is occluding the eyeball, and now the eyeball is occluding my hand, right? You see those two circles? They get small, and then they turn into this glowing white ball, and then I can move my hand around supernaturally. I can do this with two hands and rotate the thing. I can stretch it. I can throw it back right into the shelving system, and that's all you have to learn to become a modern worker.
And to prove this, the employees at Meta have started to get rid of their computer monitors, trading them in for Meta's augmented reality headsets. Mayron thinks that in less than a decade, we'll all be just wearing strips of glass that can project holograms.
In the early 80s, everybody had computers on their desktop, but no one was using them because they had a lot of work to do. So they were still using typewriters. And at some point, the CEO took all the typewriters away and everybody was forced to use their computers. So it's very exciting to see a new generation of technology, a new paradigm.
I consider us like pioneers in the holographic wild. I'm pulling up my browser with my hands and sending out emails to colleagues and just kind of really acclimating to the new environment.
Now you're putting on my computer, essentially. Our digital lives live on our phones. We have all of our pictures and notes and all these kinds of things. So, and why don't you write yourself a little sticky note? I like it. And go ahead and just take your fist right over the top of the sticky note and close your fist. And now...
Oh, what? Meta's own transition to augmented reality has run into plenty of unexpected problems. And it's still going to be a while before you'll start to see these devices in your office. But I think it's a future worth waiting for.
If we could see these holograms between us, we will have been able to share our work with one another more naturally, more efficiently, and more productively than ever before. Humanity will have evolved slightly.
This is Hatsune Miku, Japan's sensational virtual pop star. She's released over 100,000 songs in multiple languages and performed sold-out concerts around the world. Her image has appeared in games, on TV, in car races, and is even etched on the side of a Japanese space rocket.
I came for Hatsune Miku, Carlos.
She's Lady Gaga's favorite digital pop star and opened shows for her in the US 3 years ago. Tens of thousands of fans attended her exhibition and live shows near Tokyo recently.
理想のアイドルっていうとどの曲でもミクはすごい綺麗に歌ってくれる。
他没有缺点啊，没有任何让我们感到不开心的一些新闻。
She's everything to everybody. That's probably why she's so popular.
Miku's creator Hiroyuki Ito and his Sapporo-based company have been developing the virtual diva for over 10 years.
初音ミクとはキャラクターとしてすごくYouTube とかで検索するとたくさんの初音ミクが出てくるんですけども、元々の初音ミクのその原点は歌声を合成するソフトウェアなんです。
Both the software and character are named Hatsune Miku, meaning the first sound of the future. Originally based on Yamaha's Vocaloid technology, Miku the software has a sound bank containing voice samples and a huge array of tools. You input the melody and lyrics, then Miku the character sings them. To date, Krypton has sold 120,000 software licenses at $200 each to fans around the world who use it to create numerous songs and share them online. Some of the fan-created songs are chosen to be part of Miku's concerts, for which they're paid a royalty fee.
もともと初音ミクっていう存在自体がボトムアップって言いますか、中にはアマチュアクリエイターじゃなくて今もうすでにプロになって活躍している方もいらっしゃるんですけども。
The company also has other revenue streams. It makes money from merchandising, licensing deals, and concert ticket sales. According to the real-life musicians who perform with Hatsune Miku, the virtual pop star is interesting and surprising.
今年で3年ぐらい、ちょうど3年ぐらいやってきて、ライブも数十本、数百本やったので、そういうことが演奏によって起こせるためのそういう器みたいな感じになってきて、初音ミクらしさって僕はあんまりない。初音ミクって何だってあり。
For Ito, Miku has the potential to change the way we think about music.
そういう新しいテクノロジーによって新しい音楽のあり方っていうものを模索していきたいと思っていました。
And for her fans, it goes even further.
ミクって魂がないので、だからみんな魂を作り上げるために存在する。
Now, there are a lot of fitness gadgets out there. In my quest to get fit, I tested 17 of them over the last few months. At least one personal trainer I know was a little bit skeptical.
Yeah, I've been watching these new technologies come to the market for almost as long as I've been a personal trainer. They're just tricks and tropes. They're not much different than the Bowflex machines or, to be honest, the original Jane Fonda workout video.
But some of these gadgets that are just coming to the market do so much more than what they used to do, just tracking your activities. Out of all of them, this chest strap was my favorite. It comes with a robot coach that points to the future, one where you might not need a human trainer at all. And it works like this. You wear the chest strap so that it can read your heart rate, and that connects to Move's free app that talks to you.
Welcome to Move Heart Rate Hit Outdoor Running. Let's get moving and warm up in Zone 2.
Move's computerized coach tells you what to do at that exact moment, whether you're running outside or you're doing body weight exercises indoors.
Swing your arms faster to get your legs moving quicker. Let's crush this round.
And by reading your heart rate, she knows exactly how hard you're working. She keeps you honest.
Way to go, you are in the target zone. Keep pushing, you're almost at the end of the round. Don't give up.
I've been running for 7 years now, and my biggest problem is that I never push myself hard enough. I end up going on the same slow, comfortable 30-minute jog, but the Move HR Burn blasted me out of that rut. By the end of these half-hour exercises, I was drenched in sweat in a way that I never am when I work out alone. Training with a real person is great, whether that's your group instructor or your coach or your personal trainer, but humans, they're expensive. For the rest of us, this $60 gadget is all you need.
what does it take to change the world? A big army? A cure to a pandemic? A revolution? All of these take either a lot of people, thousands of hours, or massive amounts of space. But for Julian Assange, all he needs is one room, an internet connection, and the world will listen. Assange is located here, and more specifically, right here. And from that location, he's posted government secrets, classified documents, and leaked emails from some of the world's most powerful people. And in doing so, has been labeled a hero, a villain, a nihilist, and everything in between. This is how an Australian programmer sequestered in the Ecuadorian embassy in London became one of the most influential and notorious people in the world. Born in 1971 in Townsville, Australia, Assange has always been on the move. Living in over 30 homes by the time he was in his mid-teens, Assange, along with his mother and half-brother, finally settled down in Melbourne. His introduction to hacking started at 16 when he was given a Commodore 64, which he attached to a modem. He attended the University of Melbourne, where he studied programming, physics, and mathematics. He never graduated, but that doesn't mean he didn't get an education. By 1991, Assange hacked into the Pentagon, U.S. Navy, and other branches of the U.S. government. In 1996, he was caught by the Australian Federal Police and charged with over 30 counts of hacking and computer-related crimes. He didn't get any jail time, but he was fined $2,100.
I think the first taste of what would come later was the hacking that he did as a young programmer, and that really sort of foreshadowed a healthy skepticism of the use and abuse of technology by governments.
That's Vernon Silver.
I'm a reporter for Bloomberg's investigations team.
Assange's youth as a hacker laid the foundation for him to start WikiLeaks in 2006. But what is WikiLeaks? It's a website that posts unfiltered, usually classified documents. What separates it from every other media outlet is that they have no editorial hierarchy. With a publication like the New York Times, information comes in, they take that information, package it, then disseminate it for the public to see. WikiLeaks, however, cuts out the middleman.
WikiLeaks gathers information, most of it given to them anonymously. So what they're doing is really very simple. They get the information in one end from who gives it to them and out the other with sometimes minimal interference. Julian Assange is the leader of that, the mastermind, the creator, and really, because he thinks of it as a journalistic enterprise, the editor-in-chief.
But every story starts with a source, and Assange has some unconventional sources.
Julian Assange does not hack as far as we know. He is the recipient of people who are either insiders who give him secret documents or hacked emails from a foreign power.
That's Eli Lake.
I am a columnist for Bloomberg.
And there was no source bigger for Assange than Chelsea Manning. He used to be known as U.S. soldier Bradley Manning. In 2010, Manning provided Assange and WikiLeaks with hundreds of thousands of leaked government documents. WikiLeaks quietly began releasing the documents in February of 2010, then made big headlines in April by posting what is now known as the collateral murder video.
Come on, fire! It was a vivid, graphic video. It changed the debate on the Iraq War, and importantly, it put WikiLeaks on the map when they put it online, and they couldn't be ignored at that point.
And those leaks were just the beginning. They went on to post more than 90,000 leaked documents known as the Afghan war logs, 390,000 documents known as the Iraq war logs, and 250,000 private messages between diplomats called cables in what is now known as Cablegate. These leaks were met with very real ethical questions.
The problem with publishing those cables was that a number of confidential sources for U.S. diplomats who faced real danger when their names were exposed.
Then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton drove the point home that
every country, including the United States, must be able to have candid conversations about the people and nations with whom they deal.
Shortly after Cablegate, the Swedish government issued an arrest warrant for Assange on allegations of rape and molestation. He claimed the allegations were fabricated to get him extradited to the United States, a claim the U.S. government denied. Either way, Assange's next move was
to seek refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy, which really was the beginning of the new chapter in his life and what we're dealing with now, which is him being stuck in London.
What was supposed to be an office in an embassy is now Assange's self-imposed prison to this very day. But that doesn't mean he's slowed down. Since being trapped in the embassy, WikiLeaks has released files about Guantanamo Bay prisoners, Syrian political figures, and the draft to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And then came the 2016 U.S. election.
Thousands of leaked emails showed Democratic Party officials possibly plotting against Bernie Sanders in his race against Hillary Clinton.
Over the course of 68 days, WikiLeaks released 20,000 confidential Democratic National Committee emails. In terms of the presidential race, if you look right here, when Assange released the first batch of emails, Trump actually takes his first lead against Clinton.
I think we've had enough of the Clintons, in all fairness.
Once WikiLeaks started exposing secrets of the Democratic Party, Julian Assange became a hero to many on the right. Public opinion kind of flip-flopped.
WikiLeaks.
From the emails, we now know Hillary Clinton's campaign manager makes risotto, and also how the DNC squashed Bernie Sanders' campaign. One thing we don't know is who gave Assange the stolen emails in the first place.
Many leading Democrats say they suspect it was the Russians. They released an analysis from a private cybersecurity firm that had said it was the Russians.
But Assange claims
our source is not the Russian government, and it is not a state party.
So this is where we stand today. The public still doesn't know who provided the emails to WikiLeaks. Meanwhile, Assange is still running WikiLeaks and still releasing documents. In March 2017, he started publishing documents from the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence called Vault 7.
The CIA, the agency charged with finding and keeping our top secrets, can't keep its own secrets.
As long as Assange has a connection to the world, no government secret will be too far from exposure.
Julian Assange is still in the embassy. Maybe he'll leave, maybe he won't. Kind of regardless, his work has been done. He's changed the way people think about their governments, about their own secrets, about their own hackability, and really the world has changed because of him.
To expose everything you won't admit. And action. This entire video is based on a true story. When I do like motivational speeches or even tell myself like love yourself and you should love yourself.
This is Lily Singh,
But to fans all over the world, she's the YouTube star Superwoman.
What if everyone is a girl, Superwoman? I know we can change the world for the better, one positive day at a time.
My parents now know what I do. They didn't know what I did for a long time in the beginning of my career. I was just making videos in my room. They had no idea.
Mom, Dad, have you seen my keys? I can't find them anywhere. Because you're always on phone.
Until someone called them, like a family member from another part of Canada, was like, Canada, is your daughter making videos? And the mom was like, I don't know, Lily, are you making videos?
Just making videos grew into an entire career. Today, Lily's YouTube channel has some 12 million subscribers, over 2 billion views, and guest stars like Michelle Obama, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and Seth Rogen.
I think a lot of young girls are raised to believe that you're going to go to school and then graduate and then get married and then get a job and have kids.
And Lily was on that path, all the way through a psychology degree at York University in Toronto. But when she started thinking about a career,
I started to immensely panic and think something was wrong with me because I tried to figure out my life and it wasn't working in that straight line.
It was 2010, and YouTube was only 5 years old.
I thought nothing of YouTube. I was probably the last person in my circle of friends to discover YouTube. And I remember when I did, I thought, this is so strange. There's people making videos in their rooms, and other people are watching them.
So she figured, why not give it a shot?
I one day posted a video because I was sad, and I wanted to be creative and happy.
She didn't know how to edit video or write scripts, so she winged it.
It was so bad and so cringe, and my expectation was literally nothing. I was like, I'm gonna put this video up, a couple of my friends are gonna watch it, probably make fun of me, and that's gonna be the end of this. The second and third video came from, wait, 70 people watched my first one, can I get 80 to watch the next one?
She kept creating, she kept posting, and the viewers kept coming. Lily had found an audience.
A lot of the comments were, oh my God, there's a brown girl on YouTube.
More specifically, Indian. Lily's parents immigrated to Canada from India, and Lily was born and raised in Scarborough, near Toronto.
My home life was awesome. My parents, even though I portrayed them to be quite strict in my videos.
Oi, Lily, where the rest of your skirt, huh? I teach you like this to walk around like this, showing everything to everyone?
They actually aren't like that at all. They're pretty modern and pretty cool.
Your dress is short. Don't know what for.
And were pretty lenient with me. I mean, I got away with a lot of things. I was a brat. I was a brat.
She had a different idea of what she wanted out of life than other kids. In a grade school graduation slideshow, her classmates said they wanted to be lawyers and doctors.
And then I came up and I was like, rapper.
Making out with your friends, man. But then you say that you hate hoes.
I could just feel my parents being like, why?
Because that's just not something women really did in the Singh family.
I know there was a ton of people that weren't happy about my birth being a female, so I think, and that's some real-ish, but it's a real thing. The best thing I could have done to prove to so many people that didn't want my mom to have a daughter was to become Superwoman.
What up, everyone? It's your girl, Superwoman.
It was the name of Lily's favorite hip-hop song by Lil Mo featuring Fabulous.
I love the song so much because it was one of the only songs at the time that was an empowering female song, where Lil Mo's going on about, like, I will save guys with my superpowers, and I will save girls with my superpowers, and I am the Superwoman. I thought, this name that I've had for so long that empowered me when I was younger, I'm gonna make this my screen name.
Maybe there should be a new series.
Superwoman didn't just burst onto the scene overnight with a viral video. It was a steady climb fueled by hard work.
The moment that I thought this is going somewhere and this could be a career was the first time I performed internationally. It was in India. And it was the first time where I was truly across the world and people knew my videos.
Singh has transformed herself from a bratty kid to an internet personality to a media mogul. She starred in a feature film, A Trip to Unicorn Island, in 2016. And her book, How to Be a Boss, hit the New York Times bestseller list in 2017 while she was on a 30-city international tour. Lily started out with the goal of getting millions of subscribers and financial security.
Hurry the hell up!
But after surpassing those goals, success has new meaning.
I've really come to terms with the fact that my definition of success is what's the best legacy I can leave behind. And it's not the number of views and the number of subscribers. It is the number of people that can say, this girl changed my life or changed something in my life positively.
CTE is often found in the brains of deceased athletes, military veterans, and others with a history of repetitive brain trauma. Hundreds have donated their brains to the VA Boston University Concussion Legacy Foundation Brain Bank.
This is a former NFL player who died in his early 70s, and this is a veteran who also died in his early 70s.
Dr. Ann McKee dissects these brains.
The hippocampus and the mammillary bodies are very important for memory. I can see that they're slightly affected.
McKee recently dissected the brain of former New England Patriots player Aaron Hernandez, who was convicted of murder and later committed suicide.
You'll see right away that the brain is showing signs of shrinkage. You can see the crevices in the brain that you can't see in the normal.
McKee says Hernandez's severe case of CTE impacted his decision-making, depression, and ability to control rage and aggression. Right now, she thinks we're underestimating how many people have CTE.
We were able to distinguish between CTE and controls and CTE and Alzheimer's disease. The next question is, can we do this in the blood, and can we do this in living people? And we aren't there yet with those answers.
But the need for a diagnosis in the living is motivating companies such as Quanterix in Lexington, Massachusetts, to work faster on technology that could diagnose concussions and CTE in as few as 30 minutes. Kevin Rosovsky is the CEO.
It's like a high-powered microscope. And so by doing that, we can see little biomarkers that you couldn't see before in the blood.
Quanterix received a grant from the NFL and just went public. Since then, its stock is up more than 40%. The company sells a machine called Simoa for $175,000 to other biotechs, hospitals, and researchers.
And for the first time in history, we're able to see brain health in blood, and that's a major breakthrough, and that's leading to less invasive testing, and we've already been able to see evidence of concussions, and there's the beginning evidence of being able to see the accumulated effect of concussions.
Quanterix is also trying to detect Alzheimer's disease, multiple sclerosis, and ALS. Rosovsky says he thinks diagnosing concussions will be easier than diagnosing CTE.
Diagnosing CT in the living probably is a couple years away. We're real excited to see the progress, but reducing some of that work into actual tests in the laboratory takes time. There's regulatory approvals. There's a lot of red tape that you have to go through.
Also in this race to diagnose CTE in the blood are Athlon Medical and Exosome Sciences. And New York's Mount Sinai Hospital is scanning for the disease in the living. But it's just one step in a series of questions for those with serious head trauma. There's still no cure for CTE.
Even if we had a great idea for a treatment, there's no way to test whether it's effective or not. So that's the enormous advance that we'll get if we can develop a biomarker for this disease.
In Boston, Ann Mostu, Bloomberg News.
Wine is a $300 billion global industry where one person's opinion can make fortunes or break them. That's because of this man, Robert Parker, and his newsletter, The Wine Advocate. For 3 decades, he dominated as the world's most influential wine critic. Now Parker's protege is building an empire of his own. Antonio Galloni runs Venice.
Antonio, tell me, what are you trying to build at Venice?
Well, at Venice, we started with the idea in 2013 of building a world-class platform. We have a database of about 250,000 professionally written reviews. On Delectable, we have 7 million user reviews. Through Delectable, we also have a partnership with Whole Foods and several other partnerships that we can't announce just yet. And when you put that all together, what we have is something that no other company in our space can even come close to.
Do you think of yourself as the next Parker?
Not at all.
Why?
Because Steve Jobs said you can't live your life trying to be somebody else. So he's one of my biggest influences, and I've never wanted to be a replica of somebody else because a replica is never as good as the original. Bob is a genius, fantastic, one of a kind. We're going to be something completely different, and I have no desire to be some version of somebody else.
Different in what way?
Every decision that I've made at this company is completely anathemic to what Bob did with his company. I want our writers to be partners. All of my senior people are locked into the company. They all have equity or they have a path to equity based on business results. That's something that we never had at Parker. Our benefits are world-class, and everything that we've done at Venice is completely different from that model. When Steve Tanzer, who is the most experienced active wine critic in America, wants to work with us, that says something. When Alessandro Masnaghetti, who's the best cartographer of vineyards, wants to work with us, that says something. When Neil Martin, who's a superstar wine critic with enormous experience in Bordeaux and Burgundy and the former lead critic at The Advocate, wants to come and be part of our team, that says something.
You make it sound like The Wine Advocate was a disaster as a company and a miserable experience as an employee.
No, it was great because I got to work with Bob Parker when he was at his prime, and Bob was like a second father to me, and we talked on the phone all the time, and he gave me great advice.
Can anyone's palate dominate the wine criticism business the way Parker's did? And should anyone's palate dominate it the way his did?
I just think the world is very different today. It's just a totally different world. It's probably not healthy to have a single person dominating the world.
It's not even wine criticism, it's the wine industry.
Yeah, that's probably not the healthiest thing in the world. But I think that there's just such an opportunity right now with social media and technology to reach such a massive number of people that I think it's possible that 1 or 2 people will actually have more influence than Bob Parker did, because they will, again, this goes back to your first question, not trying to be a version of somebody else. You see this in sports all the time. It's like, oh, well, nobody will ever beat this record. And then somebody comes along, it's like tennis, Pete Sampras. Nobody's ever going to win as many Grand Slams. Now you have 2 guys who are ahead of that and 1 knocking on the door. And so I think a lot like that.
You're a former investment banker. How does that inform and influence what you're doing and what you've done?
My generation has had to deal with a lot more challenges. That's why I think we're actually much better poised for the future. My first job in finance, the first thing that happened was long-term capital, 1998. Then the tech bubble melted down. Then there was a mutual fund trading scandal. That was all like within about 5 or 6 years. And these are the things that I had to deal with as a young executive. My peers who were 20 years older didn't know how to manage in crisis. They'd only seen Black Monday. They'd just been in a big bull market. It's very different. So I'm very lucky. People of my generation or a little bit younger have actually had to deal with a lot more crises. I think that's actually good for learning how to cope with challenges in business.
From the outside, it kind of looks like you're trying to demolish the house that Parker built, right? You left The Wine Advocate.
Yeah.
You merged with one of his chief rivals.
Yeah.
And you just hired his successor, Neil Martin.
Mm-hmm.
So are you?
I think what that says is that all the best people want to work at our company. And that's really what we strive to create starting in 2013. We wanted to create a world-class company that would attract the best-in-class talent, and not just on the content side, on the technology side, on the digital side, our office, and at every level, what we're trying to, we only hire superstars, and we're looking for those superstars.
In the world of professional wrestling, there's something called a swerve.
Hulk Hogan has betrayed WCW.
Some examples. These tag team partners are called baby faces, or the good guys. Then one of them swerves when he super kicks his tag team partner in the head, quickly assuming the role of the bad guy, or what the wrestling world calls the heel.
Are you kidding? What a despicable act that was!
Or a match is almost lost when, what's that? The superstar wrestler appears out of nowhere sprinting down the aisle to save the match.
That's the Warriors music! That's the Ultimate Warrior!
That's a swerve. So it should go as no surprise that World Wrestling Entertainment, known as the WWE, the most popular brand of sports entertainment in the world, is prepared for any swerves that come their way. So here's the story of how the WWE learned to see the swerve coming. So I spoke to Bloomberg reporters Felix Gillette.
I'm a writer for Bloomberg News for the global business team.
And Kim Basine.
And I'm the U.S. luxury reporter at Bloomberg.
To find out exactly how the WWE is positioning itself for an all-out global invasion, which starts with a massive change to their lucrative pay-per-view model.
WWE basically pioneered the pay-per-view model on cable. I remember as a kid, when the pay-per-view events came up, all of our friends would scramble around and try and get one of the parents to pay for it.
But in 2014, they took a huge risk.
They saw a little bit sooner than some of the other entertainment brands that where this whole thing was moving was away from cable and satellite television and towards on-demand streaming video apps. They made this risky decision, in essence, cannibalizing that pay-per-view model, which they had essentially built.
And after some early turbulence, it's working. Roughly 1.5 million people are paying $9.99 a month for the WWE app, making it the 5th most popular streaming OTT service. This adapt-or-die approach is in the WWE's DNA. Over the past 30 years, the company always seems to think 2 steps ahead. In the early 90s,
WWE was at its most threatened when Ted Turner took them on with WCW,
which stands for World Championship Wrestling. And back then, the WCW was winning the ratings war. So in order to compete with them,
WWE had changed its product from a family-friendly kind of cartoonish style to this really raw. That's why they called their show Raw. It was this raw style of wrestling.
With violent, outrageous, reality-inspired plot lines and aggressive personas.
From a 16-foot ladder!
And they won that fight against Ted Turner. And they bought WCW.
The early 2000s ushered in an era of testosterone-driven programming aimed at the red-blooded American male.
Bra and panties matches, and people smash each other over their head with like barbed wire bats and things like that.
Until 2015, when WWE fans started a hashtag #GiveDivas a Since then, WWE has hired 40 more female wrestlers, and that growing cast of female characters was part of a much larger plan.
They started to try to appeal to a broader set of people.
Let's attract more female fans. And after we've attracted more female fans, let's attract more international fans. They're broadening their base, and they're doing that in large part to make it more advertising friendly.
And not just friendly to advertisers.
They're trying to build up their fan base in China. They're trying to build up their fan base in Europe. They, already have a pretty good fan base in India.
India is a place where they already have an established wrestling culture.
Because of the gigantic Indian wrestler, the Great Khali. But there's still a lot of work to do. While the WWE set a revenue record in 2017, only 30% of it is coming from an overseas audience. And there's one person whose responsibility is to grow that number.
The buck eventually stops at Vince McMahon, no matter what's happening within WWE.
Yeah, he's a very controlling guy, and it's a very, very, very tightly scripted company.
And that goes all the way down the board to big stars' entrance music. And their outfits and things like that.
So with a CEO like McMahon always planning 2 moves ahead and an aggressive push into multiple international markets, a big issue is money.
It's hard to do all those things simultaneously without committing a huge amount of capital to it.
And that's where the WWE becomes an attractive company for buyers.
Potentially, one thing that could happen with WWE is they could benefit by being acquired by a bigger technology or telecom company, an Amazon or Facebook or a 21st Century Fox.
So with a market cap of $2.8 billion, the advantage of owning 100% of their own content, and a rapid consolidation spreading throughout the entertainment industry, it looks like the WWE is well positioned, even if there are swerves ahead.
Thank you very much for coming here.
Thanks for having me.
I've always been relieved ever since you were appointed, because at least until your appointment, I seem to have the most unpronounceable name. But now, so we will keep it as Dara and John. This conference is called The Year Ahead, but in your case, you are close to 6 months into the job. And I wondered what you saw in terms of the year ahead at Uber as your biggest challenge. What's the thing that you think about most when it comes to 2018?
We definitely have our share of challenges at Uber. And for me, where I want to get Uber to the year ahead is a year of normalcy. 2017 was, I think, will go down as one of the most difficult years for any company out there. And I have to give credit to the Uber team and the employees there. It is a group of true believers who believe in our mission, who believe in mobility as a service being available to consumers everywhere at a reasonable cost. And what my job in 2018 is to get rid of the distractions and get the company back to business, get the company back to normalcy. There's a lot that we've done in the past 6 months as far as bringing new investors, driving a new culture and norms where doing the right thing, period, comes first, bringing a new management team, et cetera. There's a lot that we've gotten done, but This is a company that knows how to execute. This is a service. Mobility as a service is something that's universal, that's needed in the world, and I just want to get back to doing business.
Quite interesting. You said true believers.
Yeah.
Normally, true believers are the last possible people where you're able to change a culture. Can you explain a bit about that?
Well, I think that they understand that mobility as a service, bringing the cost of transportation down, making transportation services available to anyone and everyone on a local basis, and partnering with cities to be a solution to traffic, to pollution, et cetera. That is a mission that they all believe in. And I think that they, having seen what happened in 2017, to some extent the crisis, the enormous crisis that the company has gone through, is a benefit because everybody at the company knows now that we need to change, that we need to break with the past as far as the way the company was run. We need to go from growth at any cost to responsible growth and growth in partnership with other players out there. That's clear, but now I've got to kind of get the company down to the normalcy of execution of building great technology, and I think we're going to get there. It's still some tough sledding early on, but I absolutely think we're going to get there.
When you talk about execution, is profits one of the things you want to get? I think you lost $4 billion last year.
Well, profits,
peanuts by the standards of
profits would help. So at some point, we absolutely have to become profitable, and that's part of the plan.
Do you have a kind of goal for that? Do you think you should be profitable by 2022 or by 2020?
I think that we'll be profitable before 2022. This is the business itself.
Do you want to come back a bit closer, 2020?
Yeah, listen, it's not going to, I don't want to name a specific year, but this is a business that the core business, the ride-sharing business, can be profitable within 3 years. We will continue to make very aggressive investments in building out autonomy because we think that's a terrific opportunity for building out new technologies such as Uber Elevate, where near-term profitability is not a goal, but long-term growth is. So we will look to balance near-term profitability, but as a company, we will always be a company that makes big, bold bets and takes big risks.
To what extent, though, do you think that drive to become profitable fights against a little bit of this culture change? If you want to make, you talked about making money, but not at all costs. Do those two things?
Well, I don't think that profitability and culture are their issue. It's the company in the past was willing to make trade-offs as it related to how it did business, and I think was guilty of hubris, was guilty of thinking that they knew better than others, and I think that what we know now clearly is that breakneck growth can hide cultural issues, that there are no excuses for not doing the right thing, and that you do have to make trade-offs. And as a management team, we're specifically talking about those trade-offs that you have to make. We have to be a little more patient sometimes because working with governments, regulators, et cetera, sometimes takes longer, but in the end, you build a more lasting business. And so maybe what we went through was necessary, but we're here. We can control our actions from this moment onwards, and I think everyone at Uber from this moment onwards wants to build a great company, not only in terms of growth, but in terms of the kind of company anyone would want to work at.
Can I ask you one thing which you have got a sort of hangover from last year, which is all the regulatory problems, and particularly all the cases against you? I think there are 6 criminal probes or whatever going on.
The lawyers are lining up outside the door.
Which one do you sort of think? Which one do you fear most? I suppose out of these different things.
Listen, I think that all of them are serious issues, and my response is that we're going to be transparent and we're going to take responsibility for our actions in the past. I do think that there are certain circumstances where there was smoke but no fire, and I think as a company we have to defend ourselves and work within kind of the appropriate frameworks. And my goal is just to get beyond this stuff.
Some of these things like pricing policies, surely they go right to the heart of what Uber is, or am I wrong about that?
Yeah, I think they do, but I think that there's a way of being smart but transparent at the same time, and that's where we've got to take the company.
Take me through governments. When you talk to governments privately, do they talk any differently than they do publicly?
Governments?
Yes, governments.
I think that they are honestly a bit relieved with how we are engaging with them, because I think that the engagement is now real. I think they feel like we're out there, we're genuine because we've learned our lessons of the past, and I do think that we can take, for example, the data that we have in terms of traffic and in terms of movement of our drivers and riders, and we can use that data to partner up with cities in order to solve congestion issues, because congestion doesn't help anyone. It wastes enormous amounts of time for consumers. It hurts the environment. And I think that we are aligned with cities, for example, to partner with them in a fundamental way to solve these problems. And I do think that when these are conversations that a number of regulators and cities have wanted to have with us for many years, and I think we are really engaging with them at a depth that I think is going to create a real win-win going forward.
Do you think you were too confrontational on this before?
Yeah, I do. I think that the company was pushing growth. And listen, any innovator, to some extent, the innovation is about questioning past kind of present practices. It's about breaking things, the Facebook breaking things. We just went a step and a half too far. And what I want to keep, hopefully, is the best of both worlds, which is this spirit of innovation, the spirit of can-do, et cetera, but the responsibility of partnership. We don't know better than you. We're actually going to work with you, of actually having dialogue and respect for our city partners, for regulators, and then continuing to take risks and continuing to do daring things. And I think we can accomplish that.
Imagine this audience here is a collection of mayors or a collection of city officials, and you want to depict, this is the Year Ahead conference, depict what the years ahead in this thing are going to be like. How far is driverless cars going to go? You talked just a few days ago about the idea there being flying cars in 10 years' time. Can you just give a description of what you think transport is going to look like?
Well, I think that we think there are three keys to transport and where the industry is going: autonomous, electric, and shared. And I think all three are necessary in order to get to the next level of city planning, et cetera. There are many cities where up to a fifth of the space taken in these cities is taken by parking and storing these cars. And so I do think that you need autonomous, you need electric, and you need shared. And I do think it's going to take some time. True autonomy for every single use case is some ways away. What we bring to bear is our developing autonomy, and we will have autonomous cars on the road, I believe, within the next 18 months, not as a kind of a test case, but as a real case out there. And over a period of time, we're going to bring autonomous transportation and feather it in with the non-autonomous transportation with drivers.
What does feathering in mean?
Feathering
mean
means
to a layman like
feathering
me?
Crashing. Yeah, feathering in means if you're, for example, in Phoenix, and you make a request to go from A to B, which is what you do with Uber, there will be 95% of cases where we may not have everything mapped perfectly, or the weather may not be the right weather, or there may be an accident on the road, or you may not have 2 or 3 ways of getting from A to B, where you may say, you know what, that's not an autonomous use case. We're going to send a driver to pick that person up. For 5% of cases, everything is going to fall into place. And we will send an autonomous car. The user will be able to pick, do you want, there's an autonomous car, yes or no? And we'll be able to service that A for B. That 5% is going to go to 10 and 15 and 20 as our computers and our algorithms learn more and more about what it takes to drive in a city in a real life situation. And every minute of every day, that driver, that computer is going to get better and know Phoenix better and better and better. And in 5 years, we'll have the perfect driver in Phoenix. We will have to retrain that driver in every single city. We're going to have to build out 3D maps of these cities. And it will take time, but over a period of time, you essentially have a driver who becomes the perfect driver. It'll take 10 to 15 years, but that's the feathering in that I'm talking about.
And will a child born today, will they ever need to learn how to drive?
A child born today? No, I don't think so.
And so within sort of 20 years from now, we will...
I don't think so. Listen, I hear some groans.
And also,
I heard a couple of groans. 1.3 million people die from car crashes every year. 1.3 million people die from car crashes every year. That doesn't count an estimated 20 to 50 million people that are injured. Okay, this is actually a public safety issue. If you look at cars, 96% of cars, 96% of time, cars are sitting there not being used. It is a huge amount of pollution that's caused by these cars being in the road, and a huge amount of wasted time. So the safety is there. Electrification is absolutely key, and sharing these platforms is going to allow us to be much safer and also put our assets where they add value.
But it's quite interesting because when you first came in, I remember you sounding somewhat more skeptical about self-driving cars. You've been converted. Is that a?
The choir has spoken, and I'm listening. It's pretty exciting technology out there. But again, it will be a hybrid technology for some period of time.
What about flying cars? That came as a slight surprise.
Yes, that's a great project that we're working on. It's called Uber Elevate. And it is actually about battery technology.
It would have helped a lot of people here.
I know. I wish that I was available. We'll launch it here if we can. But battery technology is allowing us to have multiple rotors on planes, or helicopters, if you want to call them that. These rotors that are much smaller will be much quieter than helicopters are. Much quieter, much safer. If you add sharing into the equation, you can actually get the economics of going from A to B. We think within 5 to 7 years to a place where normal people would think about taking these flying cars. That'll be the beginning, and then it's about scaling. And we're working with a number of partners right now.
Do you think the regulation on flying cars? I've heard some proponents of it argue that it might be easier than it has been on driverless cars, because driverless cars, you have to deal with existing roads, existing everything. Flying cars, essentially, you're going into unconquered space.
I think that mayors that are forward-thinking understand that traffic and pollution are a real issue, and I think flying cars can be a significant solution to traffic issues in cities. And these cars, to start with, they're going to be very specific. They'll be kind of highways in the air. There'll be very specific routes that these flying cars go on. They're not going to be able to take you to your backyard and land in your backyard. There'll be these skyports. So there'll be very specific routes that you go on. And I think if you build a regulatory framework that has that kind of structure around it, I think you get to a better solve.
Can I drag you back, somewhat reluctantly, back to the real world? But you have Rajiv Misra, who came in with you from SoftBank.
Yes.
He's going to become a director. Last week, he said that Uber should focus on repairing its market share in the US and on key European markets, rather than going to new ones. Do you agree with that? Is that the way you look at Uber?
I think one of the fundamental strengths of Uber is the global scope that we have. This is a brand.
Had that motto, everywhere. What's it? Everywhere for everyone.
Yeah, everywhere for everyone.
Do you want to make it some places for some people?
No, we like the everywhere for everyone. It's much sexier than some places for some people.
That's telling me.
Just not interesting. I do think seriously though the global scope that our company brings is important. Our being able to build technology that we can amortize essentially everywhere in the world is hard, but it is part of the fundamental value that we introduce. So I would look at Uber very much as a global brand. That said, we're going to look at all opportunities, but at this point, we are leaning forward. In 2018, for us, is going to be very much a lean forward year for the company.
But without, I'm not trying to create new boardroom tension at Uber, but that would appear that SoftBank is keener on a more limited idea, whilst you're keener on everywhere for everyone.
Well, listen, SoftBank is a very important shareholder. They're our largest shareholder, and many of our shareholders have opinions over what's the right thing to do. Ultimately, the governance of the company is going to be at the board, and we'll have those discussions at the board, and we'll set our long-term strategy, and then execute on it.
One of the things which Uber played, perhaps not very fortunately, a role in was the whole sexual harassment questions and everything to do with that. I suppose one very obvious question: do you think that you have solved that part of the culture? But secondly, do you think that this is a real revolution and it's going to stick?
I think that what was happening at Uber was serious, and I think that while what Uber went through was difficult, I think the Susan Fowler blog was probably one of the best things that happened for Uber, and it certainly started a movement that's an incredibly important movement of the company. I'd be reticent to say that it's solved.
Yeah.
But it's not an endemic issue within the culture of the company, and I think the company has learned, and I think the company took very harsh and appropriate steps to make sure that kind of behavior is absolutely clear, that kind of behavior is not accepted in any way, shape, or form of the company, regardless of where you are, regardless of if you're a great performer or not. So I think we're at the right place for Uber as a company, but I think in general, we're not where we need to be in terms of women in senior positions, making sure that we're welcoming of women in technology, and we help women really build their careers within our company. There's a great kind of bottoms-up energy there, but we're not where we need to be, and we have a lot of work ahead of us.
On the issue of, you talked about the top performers, is that looking back, and also I suppose looking forward for many of the people in this room, because there are a lot of people's businesses which have been affected by this. If you had to give lessons to other people who are now looking at this issue, perhaps more seriously than they have done before, is the really bad issue, and I suppose I'm thinking some ways about the media industry in this, is that giving top performers more room for maneuver or whatever than people, or more discretion than people thought? Is that top performers need to be treated the same as everybody else?
I think they absolutely need to be held accountable. One of the really valuable lessons that I got early in my life was actually through Jack Welch, and he said, it's very tempting to allow top performers to misbehave in any way, but for me, he was talking about being aligned with the CEO. Sometimes you allow top performers. The tendency is, well, let them get away with some kind of behavior that is not the right behavior because they're so good. And what Jack told me very early on is that it's the top performers who are problematic culturally that are the most dangerous, because they have followership within the company, because people look up to them. So he's like the dumb person who is bad culturally. He's not the problem, because everyone says, well, that's a dumb person, so who cares? It's the smart person who has followership. So it is incredibly important for the top performers to actually be held to account more radically than anyone else, because they're the ones who have followership at the company, and they have to set the example. So for me personally, that has absolutely guided how I've managed. Expedia was a company that had, excellent cultural values. And one of the first things we did at Uber was to go out and reset our cultural values, and we call them norms, because to me, it's not just these values that you put on the wall and kind of people stare at and it's all nice. It's about behavior. And we set out to change behavior at Uber, and I think that the company was thirsting for it, and we are starting on a path, and I believe it's going to be a positive path.
An inevitable question, I hope you won't regard it as a cheap shot, but you talked about smart people who have followers throughout a company. I mean, Travis would seem to be the epitome of that sort of figure. Do you think of him as being in that category of people that Jack Welch was talking about?
I think, listen, Travis was the CEO of the company, and he had incredible followership, and he was held to account, right? I mean, he's no longer the CEO of the company, and he's a board member. He's a big investor, and so he's absolutely going to play a part on the board. But we've also been very clear as a company that we do have to make a break with the past, with how we behaved as a company, and to some extent with the new CEO being a very different kind of a CEO. So in the end, you have to be held accountable, and I think that Travis was held accountable, and at this point, he's a board member and a constructive one at that.
If you look around the world now, where do you see the next competitors to Uber? You've obviously got Lyft breathing down your neck.
Yes.
Where else do they come from?
Well, I think that as you move into a world of autonomy, the position of the car manufacturers, the position of, for example, Google, who's developing Waymo and Waymo autonomous technology, you're going to get a lot of players interested in this space. And a lot of people think about Uber and ride sharing as a significant enterprise, and it is. But the fact is that we account for less than 1% of miles driven on the road now. When autonomy comes in, that number over the next 10 years is going to be closer, I believe, to 15 to 20%. So because we're not yet a true alternative to car ownership, and I believe that as you bring autonomous and you bring the price of mobility down and make it available to everybody, everywhere, then we become a real alternative to car ownership, and that really opens up the market for us, but it also opens us up to many more competitors.
And is Google at the forefront of those competitors at the moment?
Google is one of many. I think that they've developed very strong autonomous technology, but what we think, which is exceptional, is having autonomous technology and the network under one roof, which allows us to use autonomous in a very practical way, nearer than you think.
This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from our homes in New York and New Jersey, streaming on YouTube, TGIF. It is Friday, August 21st, 2020. And here we go again, Jason Kelly. Choppy session, and yet stocks up. The S&P 500 headed toward its fourth straight weekly advance. It's the longest weekend streak this year.
It feels like one of those weeks where it's already next week. Everything's so jammed in, and I wasn't even here on Monday. But yeah, listen, we're going to finish strong for sure, as our producer Ariel Agami just said. In my ear, we've got a huge show coming up because so much is happening in the world, so much conflict, so much challenge. But as you said, sort of an overall enthusiastic market.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about the virus. We're going to talk about SPACs. We're going to talk about politics and Prosecco. So I don't know about you, but that feels like a pretty good Friday to me.
I like the way you ended there.
All right, let's get you going on this Friday with a check on the markets. Here is Doug Prisner. Happy Friday.
Hey, Prosecco, like that. Carol, the day's economic news showed the economy is on track in terms of the recovery. And you look at the sales of previously owned home figures, we were up in July by the most on record. And I guess you got to really credit the low mortgage rates powering the residential real estate market higher. And at the same time, we learned today that business activity in August expanded at the strongest pace since early last year. So you're right, the S&P 500 in record territory right now at 3391 with a gain of about 0.2%. The NASDAQ comp also extending an all-time high at 11,285. The gain there is about 0.2%. Where the Dow is concerned, we're up about 0.5%. Now, to be fair, there are lingering concerns about the durability of the recovery given the stalemate in Washington on further economic stimulus. Earlier today, GOP Senator John Kennedy said no talks are ongoing between House Speaker Pelosi and Treasury Secretary munition. We've got a 10-year Treasury now yielding 63 basis points and a recovery in the dollar, with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index rising 0.4%. I'm Doug Krisner. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, to understand that choppy market that we talked about just a minute ago, let's set the Business Week agenda. For that, we've got a great team. Sarah Ponzak, cross-asset reporter for Bloomberg. She joins us on the phone. Dave Wilson, he's out in New Jersey, our stocks editor for Bloomberg, author of the Chart and Stock of the Day. Dave, let me start with you. We heard the numbers there from Doug, a little bit of detail. What do you make of this trade? What are the contours here?
Well, there's not a whole lot of direction really for stocks. I mean, you're talking about the S&P 500 going from up 0.2% to down 0.2% and back again, basically. And look, things are kind of slowing down in terms of second quarter earnings for sure. I mean, you have some retailers and a few other companies coming out next week, but basically the script is kind of written at this point. Numbers not so awful relative to what analysts were anticipating going into the reporting period, and yet not necessarily a whole lot of reaction in terms of individual stocks to the results when they're positive. Certainly enough to help the S&P 500 set a record, no question. But the other thing that jumps out of today, if you look at the big tech companies, most of them kind of directionless like the rest of the market. But there are two notable exceptions, Apple and Tesla. What's the common denominator? They're about to split their stock. Today, you've got to own shares of Tesla if you expect to get in on their 5-for-1 stock split. Apple, Monday is the date of record for their 4-for-1 split. They're both going to be paid out, this coming Friday, so a week from today. And so what do you got? You got Apple shares up almost 4%. You got Tesla up almost 4.5%. And get this, for the month of August, Apple's up 15%. And if that holds up, it would be the third straight month with a double-digit percentage gain for the shares. And Tesla is up 46% for August.
God.
It's amazing.
Off to the universe. It's crazy. Hey, Sarah Ponzak, come on in on this because we haven't talked to you in a while, and it is amazing to just kind of see the equity markets just continue to churn higher and higher and higher.
It really is amazing. You mentioned earlier on that this is going to be the fourth week that we do see gains for the S&P 500, also the fourth week for the NASDAQ. And for the S&P, that is the longest winning streak of the year. And it's pretty unbelievable to really wrap your mind around that fact when the reality is over the last 4 weeks, that's the period that we've been really contending with the fact that we have no new fiscal package to help the economy, yet stocks have just remained in there. And in the beginning of the month, in the beginning of August, we did see yields rise, we did see cyclicals, values start to outperform, but we really have just reverted to that old leadership once again. In fact, today, if you look at growth versus value stocks, once again hitting a record high for growth, we continue to see those names outperforming. Today, also, you have the S&P 500 Tech Index at a record high. You have those growth indices at a record high. And meanwhile, this week, we're actually seeing the worst week for value since April and the second worst since 2001. So it really makes you think about this advance as we start to see it narrow out.
Can I just say, Jason, we've got a couple good guests coming up. We've got a market guest, Drive to the Close, that's going to talk about specifically technology. That's her area of expertise. And then we've got Danny Blanchflower, who's going to join us from Dartmouth. And I am curious to see what he has to say about the economic reports. Does it support the continued rise that we see in the equity trade?
Yeah, and just picking up on something that Sarah just said, I mean, Dave, I think folks would be pretty amazed if you told them 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, listen, everything's going to expire at the end of July in terms of fiscal stimulus and support from the government, but stocks are going to continue to grind higher. The absence of that feels pretty remarkable, especially when you look at where the markets are.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I'm just looking at the industry groups in the S&P 500 in August. And, the consumer discretionary category, you're talking retailers, home builders, automakers, a whole bunch of companies that are dependent on, income like the checks that the government was handing out not that long ago. It's actually beating the S&P 500 this quarter. It's one of the top performers along with technology and industrial stocks. So, it just goes to show you that, even in the face of the lack of additional stimulus from Washington, nonetheless, the shares that might be most affected are still doing just fine. I mean, some of that is Amazon.com, no doubt, because they're in that category as a retailer. But even so, I mean, it is a rather notable performance.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. We really appreciate it. Dave Wilson, you'll be back with us a little later on with your chart and stock of the day, the Friday editions. Our thanks as well to Sarah Ponzek, Cross Asset Reporter, giving us some great context on the markets. You want to do the bite of the day? Let's do the bite of the day, and then I want to talk a little bit about the show. This bite of the day is fantastic.
All right, yeah, let's do it. Today's number is 14. Kanye West was kept off Wisconsin's presidential ballot because he missed the deadline for turning in nomination papers by
14 seconds, not minutes, not hours, seconds. This is according to the AP.
They must have some kind of clock, is all I'm gonna
Seriously.
say.
Rapper had until 5 p.m. to file, but his campaign didn't enter the Election Commission's building until 14 seconds after the cutoff. Commission said it was a close call, but the common sense dictates 5 p.m. is 5 p.m. I feel like that's the sort of line that I use when my kids miss curfew.
Right. Or I was thinking about our lovely boss, Anthony Mancini. If you're not there at the top of the show, because the show starts at a certain time,
Yeah,
5 seconds
true.
late,
Yeah.
15 seconds late, 14 seconds late, you miss it.
Who are we talking about that might be like skidding into the
I
studio?
usually
14
get
seconds late?
here, but it's just
I
fine.
usually get here.
Oh my
Strong
God!
words there, Master.
Can I just say I am so looking forward to this show. We are going to talk about everything affecting our world. Dr. Harold Paz, he's the CEO of Wexner Medical Center. He's at Ohio State. We're going to talk virus. We've got another blank check company that's IPOing. We've got Fast Acquisitions, 2 co-CEOs. They're going to talk about what they want to invest in, Jason Kelly.
Yeah, SPAC Mania. We're also going to talk about the end of the Democratic National Convention. If I'm a little sleepy this week, it's because I've stayed up late, much past my bedtime, every night this week.
And you don't
taking
stay
that
up
all
for
in.
most. You
And
are pretty disciplined.
I don't stay up for anything, and yet I was up watching this, and it was pretty compelling television. Rick Davis is going to break that down with us. And speaking of politics, an amazing story, Josh Green's story about Steve Bannon. WOA.
And I'm just going to say some cool things in our final hour. It has to do with wine and also communities and film. All right, let's get to all the national news headlines. Over to Nancy Lyons we go in D.C. Hey, Nance.
Hey, Carol. The Postal Service is committed to enabling a successful election. That's the word from Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, who testified today before the Senate Government Operations Committee. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman with the story.
DeJoy said he would not restore the mail sorting machines that have been removed because they're not needed, and more room for packages is needed.
Trying to have any negative impact on the election is an outrageous claim. If everyone complies with the mail process, there will be absolutely no issue, and the Postal Service stands ready. We are very committed to having a successful election. We are very, very comfortable that we will achieve this mission.
DeJoy attributed mail delays largely to postal workers unavailable due to the coronavirus. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Joe Biden wrapped up the Democratic convention last night by challenging Americans to embrace, quote, the path of hope and light as he accepted his party's nomination. But Vice President Mike Pence tells Fox and Friends he thinks his speech portrayed a grim future for the country if Biden is elected.
Joe Biden laid out, and you have to look through the platitudes to hear it, but Joe Biden laid out an agenda for higher taxes, socialized medicine, open borders, abortion on demand.
Well, Facebook is reportedly working on contingency plans if President Trump loses the election and tries to use the social media platform to delegitimize results. Officials with Facebook have apparently discussed a kill switch to shut off political advertising after Election Day. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts.
All right, Nancy, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. I feel like this story was written for you, for your family. We talk a lot about, sort of the youth still seeing, like we did, although me later in life than you, sort of the stars in your eyes when you come to New York City. There's still something about it. Even with everything that's gone on, man, you just spend a few minutes in New York City and it's a high.
There's a great story. Britton O'Daly of Bloomberg wrote it. New York City holds a lure for 2020 graduates with dreams of big city life. I have to say, I have an older sister who first brought me into New York, went to college in New York, have worked in New York pretty much my whole life, and I still love, love, love our city. Interestingly enough, Jason, I was somewhere this morning and a young individual, don't you love how I always do this? I can't say names. That's all it is. But anyway, she just moved with a roommate to New York. She said they got a great deal on an unbelievable apartment, but a 14-month lease that gave them that great rate, meaning I think there's expectations in a year and a half, things are going to be stronger again in New York City. And she said, I wanted to be in the city. I'm from Pennsylvania. This is where I want to be. I'm working. And I don't think this whole idea about this demise of cities, and I think our real estate guests that we've had over the last week or so have pretty much confirmed that.
I think they have. I mean, look, I think the contours of the city will change, but the direction will not. I mean, I first came to New York when I was in college, New York City for the first time. My college roommate, still a very dear friend, grew up in New York City. He brought me here, and I remember, being that guy, looking up at the skyscrapers, coming out. We had taken the bus up from school in Washington into Port Authority. Not great back then, but I was hooked from that moment, and then getting a chance, obviously, to work in New York City. I mean, it all holds true. What they say, make it here.
You can make it anywhere. There's some great stats in this story. I'll put it on Twitter, but apartments renting for less than $2,000 a month, jumping 37% this year through July. So you can get some opportunities. But it also talks about the job prospects, and I think that's one thing that might be a little tricky for some time.
We're not getting commissions here, folks.
No, we are not.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
So the S&P 500 is marching toward its fourth straight weekly gain. That would be the longest winning streak of the year. Right now we're at a record 3,393 with a gain that is greater than 0.2%. The NASDAQ Composite also extending an all-time high at 11,298 with a gain of 0.3% as well. Where the Dow is concerned, we're higher by about 0.6%. The day began with some eco data that was above forecast. Sales of previously owned homes surged in July by the most on record, and then you look at business activity in August. It expanded at the strongest pace since last year. Among actively traded issues, look at Deere & Company stocks up more than 5%. After Deere boosted its sales outlook, the company is expecting sales of agricultural and turf equipment to fall 10%. Sounds weak? Yeah, but it's better than the prior forecast. Wells Fargo has begun its long-awaited job cuts. The bank is expecting to reduce the size of its workforce through a combination of attrition, the elimination of open roles, and job displacements. Tens of thousands of positions may ultimately be eliminated. Wells Fargo showing weakness today by something around 0.4%. Apple powering the information tech group higher. Shares are up more than 3%. You know, the record date for that 4-for-1 stock split is Monday. And Tesla, now with a market cap greater than Walmart. Shares are up nearly a little more than 4% right now. Tesla will begin trading on that 5-for-1 split adjusted basis beginning next week. That would be August 31st. I'm Doug Prisner. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Masser, and we're going to talk about the convention, the Democratic National Convention that happened this week, and look ahead to next week's Republican National Convention. But, you know, clearly, if you watched it all, you saw that we are still in the midst of a massive medical and healthcare crisis in this country. It is worth remembering, even amid more positive economic news and certainly a market that's very enthusiastic. So let's check in on the virus, get the latest, especially from outside our little bubble here in the tri-state area. Dr. Harold Paz is with us, the CEO of Wexner Medical Center, Chancellor of Health Affairs at Ohio State University. He joins us from the Buckeye State. So, Dr. Paz, really nice to have you back with us. So help us understand where we are. What's it like on the ground where you are?
Yes, thank you very much, Jason. Delighted to be back. So, you know, in Ohio, we're seeing a leveling off in the Columbus area of the number of patients that are being hospitalized. We were at our peak in mid-April, and we've seen those numbers slowly come down. We still have COVID-positive patients in the hospital, and we're certainly seeing them in the clinical sites. But the good news is we're nowhere near our peak, and that's important.
And is it also about not only about numbers coming down, certainly in states like yours and other places, we've certainly seen it come down dramatically, Dr. Paz, in New York, but is it also about, compared to where we were maybe even just a month ago, we've started to really figure out ways to treat patients who come down with coronavirus so that they may get sick, but we can keep them alive?
Yeah, and that's another important point. Among the patients that are hospitalized, we're seeing fewer patients in the intensive care unit setting on ventilators, and that's really important. And there are a number of things that have been used over the past several months. We've learned a lot. Remdesivir, which is the antiviral drug that we can give intravenously, has been added. We're using a steroid drug called dexamethasone, prone posturing, so that patients are put on their abdomens as opposed to on their backs and given high flow oxygen so they don't have to go on mechanical ventilation. And there have been efforts to use convalescent plasma as well, and that I know there continues to be research looking at how effective that is. But all these different approaches, as they come together, mean that we're coming up with more and more effective ways to help patients that become critically ill with the virus. And of course, all the things that we're doing on the ground to prevent the spread. And that's incredibly important, getting everybody to wear a mask, to socially distant and to wash their hands as frequently as they can, not touching their eyes, ears, nose, or mouth, because we want to stop the spread. That's the first step, is blocking the spread, which gets the overall numbers down.
So, Dr. Paz, talk to us about rapid testing, because I feel like that is something that's really come to the fore this week. There's a lot of, I think, enthusiasm and optimism around that. That even came up last night in former Vice President Joe Biden's speech around what he would do if he were elected. Where are we? How effective? What should we be thinking about when it comes to rapid testing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of progress being made in testing, and we're looking for the results to show how effective these new forms of testing are. Let me just give you a little bit of background on this. So what we were using up until now primarily is what's called viral RNA detection. So the genetic code in a virus is different than in people. In people, it's DNA. In this particular virus, it's RNA. And what we're looking for is the signature RNA for this virus that causes COVID-19. And you do that on a machine called a PCR machine, polymerase chain reaction machine. That's the gold standard. We set that up at the Ohio State Wexner Medical Center, 10 machines, and we could do up to 4,500 tests a day. But it takes time. It takes more than 15 minutes. But then again, it is highly sensitive for the virus and highly specific. We estimate that our test at Ohio State Wexner has over 99% sensitivity rate to find the virus. So it's great, but the results on average take 48 hours or so to get back to the patient. And we've all heard these stories of patients going into some places and it takes 7 days, right? So that's a challenge. So newer types of testing depend on something else, which is called viral antigen detection. So instead of looking for the RNA that the virus codes for, it's looking for an antigen on the surface of the virus. And these tests can yield results within 30 minutes and without specialized instruments.
They're effective. And they're effective. Just got about 20 seconds, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, so they are, because they are not these sophisticated machines, they're not as sensitive, at least up until now, but the tests are getting better. And there's always the possibility as well that it can detect non-COVID virus, another form of corona, and give you a false positive
Got it. Dr. Paz, hang on. We're going to do a little bit of news, but we're going to come back. I love all the specifics and really getting down into the medical details of all of this. Dr. Paz will be back with us in just a moment, right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Harold Paz, CEO at the Wexner Medical Center in Ohio. He's also the Chancellor of Health Affairs at The Ohio State University. Eager to hear more about rapid testing and maybe where we go from here. Vaccine check-in. We could talk to him all day.
Yeah, former chief medical officer over at Aetna, so much to get to. So we'll get back to him in just a moment. Let's get back, though, to Doug Krisner with a check on the world of business. Hey, Doug.
Hey, Carol. So the day's economic data kind of points to the recovery being on track, and it's helping to send the equity market to record highs. The S&P right now up by about 0.3%. NASDAQ comp rising about 0.4% or so. And where the Dow is concerned, a gain of 0.6%. In terms of that data, sales of previously owned homes surged in July by the most on record. And then you look at business activity in August, we saw expansion at the strongest pace since early last year. Now, there are concerns at the margins about the durability of the recovery, particularly given the stalemate in Washington on further stimulus. Earlier today, GOP Senator John Kennedy said no talks are ongoing between House Speaker Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Mnuchin. Now, the market is also tracking very much the state of the coronavirus in Europe. It seems like we're grappling with a resurgence in infections here in the U.S. Florida's positive test rate stabilized, and cases and deaths were down in Arizona. Dr. Andrew Pekaj is a researcher in molecular microbiology and immunology at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg Public School of Health. He says it's important to set realistic expectations for a vaccine.
Oftentimes, the vaccines that work in children are different from the ones that work well in adults, and they're both different from the ones that work in the elderly, for instance. And we know that this COVID-19 disease is very different in these three populations, and vaccines that are going to be rolled out may not be tested for all of those populations. And so when we get vaccines, there will be safety data, there will be efficacy data, but it may not be across all those populations. So the vaccines that are rolled out may only work for certain groups, and we may have to wait longer for vaccines that work in other groups.
That is Dr. Andrew Pekaj of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. The school is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg. He is founder of Bloomberg LP, the parent of Bloomberg Radio, and Bloomberg Philanthropies. 10-year Treasury, right now with a yield of 63 basis points. I'm Doug Krisner. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Johns Hopkins folks there. And I feel like, Jason, we've been so lucky between Johns Hopkins and so many other medical communities, including our current guest, Dr. Harold Paz. He's CEO at Wexner Medical Center, Chancellor of Health Affairs at Ohio State University, joining us on the phone from Ohio. These folks have really given us so much information and our audience really an understanding of what COVID-19 is all about and kind of where we go. One thing I do want to ask you, Dr. Paz, is politics. November. How does potentially who ends up in the White House come November impact our ability to get ahead of this virus? Do we have Dr. Paz?
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
Carol. So,
that's okay.
Well, I think this is a public health issue, and it's really a matter of doing all the things that we need to do with any epidemic or pandemic from a public health and a medical standpoint. And it's really about prevention. It's about diagnosis, as we were just talking about briefly a few minutes ago. And it's about effective treatments. And part of that is having the vaccines available to prevent the spread of this virus and to make sure that we can develop herd immunity so that there is not going to be additional waves of this COVID-19 virus spreading through our communities.
But can I just follow, because I do feel like the virus, though, as you know, has become rather political. We certainly saw it early on in terms of getting access to equipment, for there being, a message for the entire country, and it's safe to say, you know this better than we do, that it definitely has, made it more difficult for us to get ahead of the virus because we were all kind of doing things differently.
Yeah, so I can tell you that in Ohio, the governor of Ohio, Governor DeWine, has taken a very strong leadership role in all aspects of dealing with this pandemic. Everything from being very clear about the need to wear a mask, about the programs around social distancing, and ensuring that we can go out and do the things that we need to do in terms of testing and then making sure we had things like reagents to run these PCR machines I mentioned before, all the way to coordinating among the hospitals to deal with patients should there be a surge and these hospital facilities get stretched to their limitations. So it is exceptionally about having appropriate leadership in place and taking that view at the very top all the way through to how we deliver care in our local communities.
So, Dr. Paz, before we let you go, talk to us about reopening Ohio State specifically, but also the advice that you're giving even lower down in the educational system as we think about K through 12.
Of course. Well, we're spending a lot of time, as you can imagine, at Ohio State as we reopen the university. And we want to make sure that we're able to do that and to do it safely. And that, of course, means that we want to test our students as they come back. We want to make sure that we de-densify classes. So these large lecture classes that all of us know from when we were in college are not going to work right now. So that we do over distance learning, but smaller classes where we can have appropriate distancing, keep our students 6 feet apart, make sure they're wearing masks, make sure our faculty are wearing masks, particularly in areas like the medical school where they have to be physically present, or even in areas like theater arts where, or in dance where they have to be in a class. You can't do that over your TV monitor. We want to make sure that we can continue to do these things, but do them safely. And of course, this has had an impact on some programs like athletics, and it resulted in some very difficult decisions that needed to be made to keep our students and our staff and our faculty safe. But we are all doing this with the notion that we're going to get through this thing. And, I'd like to tell you the precise day in the next year when this will all be done, but it will be done. And we'll be on the other side of it. And then we're going to get back to all the things that we used to do at the university to their fullest extent. But in the meantime, without shutting down entirely, and that's what we want to avoid at all costs, is to have to shut down entirely. We want to do as much as we possibly can that we can do safely.
Right. All right. Well, we've run out of time. We'd love to have you back soon because you are really at the nexus of so many things that we're interested in when it comes to fighting this virus, the future of education, and as you alluded to, Buckeye football. I mean, goodness gracious, no Big Ten football. Yikes. In any case, we will get through this, though. We really appreciate Dr. Harold Paz. He is the Wexner Medical Center CEO and Chancellor of Health Affairs at the Ohio State University.
When he comes on, I'm just jotting a million notes, just
totally
so kind of understand
so great.
what we're doing, what is still to come. All right, right now we need to get a check on world and national news headlines. Over to Nancy Lyons we go in D.C. Hey, Nance.
Hey, Carol. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy is defending his management of the U.S. Postal Service and says the agency is fully capable of handling what is expected to be a record number of mail-in ballots in the November election. He testified today before the Senate Homeland Security Committee and took questions from lawmakers, including Democratic Senator Gary Peters of Michigan, who pressed DeJoy on the removal of mail processing machines.
Will you be bringing back any mail sorting machines that have been removed since you've become Postmaster General? Will any of those come back?
There's no intention to do that. They're not needed, sir.
So you will not bring back any processors?
They're not needed, sir.
Republican Senator Ron Johnson has dismissed the alarm bells that have been sounded by the Democrats, saying it's another hyperbolic false narrative perpetrated to gain political advantage. Russian doctors have granted permission for prominent anti-corruption campaigner Alexei Navalny to be flown to Germany for medical treatment. Navalny remains unconscious and in serious condition after becoming ill on a plane yesterday while returning to Moscow. He only had a cup of tea before boarding the flight. European Commission spokeswoman Nabila Mazrali says they want a thorough investigation into whether he was poisoned.
We expect a swift, independent, transparent investigation. And if confirmed, those responsible must be held to account.
Navalny has written extensively about corruption in Russia's inner circle His wife says Russian officials cannot be trusted. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons. This is Bloomberg.
Nancy, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, a story that caught both of our attention, Carol, is a story courtesy of the Wall Street Journal about the paper towel shortage. You know, a few months ago, we were talking about a shortage of toilet paper, and that led to some, shall we say, intimate and very specific conversations about toilet paper quality.
Luckily, it's
and
flown
my mother being
again.
horrified that I was even using the word toilet, which was banned when I was growing up. And as we have discussed, it's just a matter of not finding alternatives. It's like, why are you even talking about it? In any case, paper towels.
Because, Deb, we get kind of real around here.
Yeah, I mean, but when it comes to paper towels, what's interesting is this is really, according to this story, a result of better supply chain management, just-in-time inventory, as it's known, and it has left some gaps and some shortages and some price gouging when it comes to paper towels.
Yeah, exactly. And I love this. I remember taking this accounting class in college. You know, it's kind of just in time and so on and so forth. But essentially, I guess what's been going on is make only what you can, sell quickly, order only enough materials to keep production lines going, have only enough rail cars for a day's worth of output, stock only enough items on a shelf to last till the next batch arrives. It's lean manufacturing, just-in-time inventory. You have to use it when you're doing accounting. And it was born in the Japanese automotive industry back in the 1970s, and it became religion for many American CEOs. But they have become very leaner, making sure they're not caught with massive stockpiles that cost a company.
Right. And the net effect here is you've got some big companies like Georgia Pacific, you know, figuring out, all right, do we need to rework some lines? Do we need to really think about where we manufacture, how we manufacture, our staffing levels, all these different things? So it's complicated in many ways, but, you know, it's also good. Like, don't use too many paper towels.
I know. I just got this cool thing. It's like made out of recycled materials. I can use it for kind of wiping up messes and things.
Look at you, loving the earth.
I'm trying to. Still working on that paper thing, Kelly.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
So we've got just about an hour and 12 minutes in today's session to wrap up what has been a very interesting week. Right now, the S&P 500 advancing for its, or toward, I should say, its fourth straight weekly gain. We're at a record level, 33.96, with a gain of something greater than 0.3%. NASDAQ comp also extending an all-time high. We're above 11,300 with a gain of 0.4%. For its part, the Dow is higher by 0.7%. Deere shares higher by just about 5% or so. Company boosting its sales outlook earlier today. In the minus column, though, we have Delta Airlines moving lower. Delta sent a notice for possible layoffs to 2,258 pilots. Now, the Airline Pilots Association saying most of these pilots will depart on September 1st. We have Apple leading information tech stocks higher. The record date for that 4-for-1 stock split is on Monday. Tesla now surpassing Walmart in terms of market value. Tesla will begin trading on that 5-for-1 stock split adjusted basis beginning August 31st. And Major League Baseball has postponed the remainder of the Mets-Yankees series out of an abundance of caution. The Mets said that 2 members in the organization tested positive for COVID-19. These games, by the way, were set for Saturday and Sunday, and that has sent shares in DraftKings lower. Right now, we're looking at a 10-year Treasury yielding 64 basis points. I'm Doug Krisner. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, when you think about what's going on in the world, and when the name Steve Bannon comes into the headlines like it did yesterday with a vengeance, there is one thing you want to read, and that's anything that Josh Green writes. And we're fortunate to have that as the centerpiece of our political conversation today. Joining us, Amanda Colson-Hurley. She is politics editor for Bloomberg Business Week. She edited this piece. And Joel Weber, of course, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week. He joins us from Massachusetts. So, Joel, I was so happy when this hit the wire because it's what you want to know. It is what's going on and a reminder of who Steve Bannon is.
That's right. And you know, Josh Green, for those that don't know him, wrote a book that was very much about Steve Bannon and sort of the power that he's been able to wield on the right. And so that's called The Devil's Bargain. And I had kind of nudged Amanda earlier in the day. Josh is obviously a very busy man right now with an election around the corner, and we've got him on all kinds of stories. And I was like, just, you know, by the way, just make sure that you remember to nudge Josh because we saw this Bannon headline flash that he had been arrested. And I was like, oh boy, of all the people in the world, like I desperately want to read right now, Josh Green just made himself that #1 person. And so Amanda and Josh got it done. Amanda, what's ultimately Josh's take in the story?
Yeah, so Josh's take is that Bannon's indictment sort of represents the end of this arc of a political project that Bannon kind of began when he was advising Trump before, you know, when Trump was campaigning in 2016, that it was really Bannon who had this vision of combining a sort of anti-immigrant nationalism with economic populism to kind of come up with this, what he thought was like a winning, you know, multi-generational kind of winning formula for the Republican Party. And I think at the time, you know, Republican Party leaders were really not sold on that. They really thought that they had to start to pivot to the center a little bit more, try to win over more moderate voters, try to make more inroads with minority groups. But Bannon's vision or insight proved to be correct in 2016. You know, Trump won. But you know, Bannon kind of thought that, you know, this was going to be the beginning of a grand political project that would unfold from there. And, you know, what actually happened was that he pretty quickly alienated himself, you from other people in the White House. He left the White House. He kind of tried to drum up a kind of global nationalist political movement. That has so far, not yielded too much, at least for him. This, recent indictment kind of shows that he was not able to deliver on, a key promise of that vision that he shaped for Trump, which was the wall. This was an effort to privately fund and build the border wall. And it collected something like $25 million in donations from hundreds of thousands of people. And the allegation is that Bannon and three others kind of used a nonprofit and I think a shell company to funnel some of that money, to themselves personally. And so Bannon, this represents arguably, the end of his political project. But notably, Trump has also not been able to deliver on some of these things either. He has not built a great, big, beautiful wall as he promised on the campaign trail. It's very difficult to argue that America is kind of great again. I mean, with, his tax cuts, benefited arguably the rich and not so much the kind of middle class as that Bannon, I think, and Trump, had hoped.
Well, Amanda, that's what's really interesting, and I love just even the title, that Josh puts and you guys put on this at the end of, it may mean the end. You guys put on this at the end of, it may mean the end of Steve Bannon, maybe Trump too, and it's interesting because, as you say, they laid out this platform. There were critical states of voters who bought into that platform and brought Trump to the White House come 2016. And yet now, first of all, we know Bannon and Trump aren't a pair anymore. And you're realizing that that political platform that got Trump to the White House, isn't there. He didn't follow through. And then you do wonder about, okay, so what impact might that have come 2020, come November?
Right. Well, I think that clearly remains to be seen. There are certainly some things that I would guess, Trump voters believe that he has delivered on. I'm sure he has put a lot of, conservative judges. He has made a lot of those appointments, and that was a really big, that was a really big factor, I think, for a lot of people who voted for him.
Yeah.
There are, other variables in this, but certainly some of those, I guess the kind of signature, you might also almost call them Bannonian kind of goals from the 2016 campaign do seem to be unfulfilled at this point.
Yeah, it's a really interesting reminder of how important he was.